enjoyed your lunch and are ready to be entertained with even more today. I thank you for coming. We have a wonderful crowd today, and when we finished in the kitchen, someone said we'd had all the loaves and fishes today. So I hope that you're full now and ready to listen. We have an esteemed guest with us this morning, but he is a member of our class. And we're so fortunate to have him and his wife, Bruce and Patsy Burdett, are members, new members, fairly so, before Christmas time. And they are newly retired, I think, from, probably you never retire, I found that out, but they're retired maybe from something they did for a while. And we're so honored and happy to have them with us this morning. They are both natives of New Jersey. And how they got to Texas is probably another story. But we're so glad they did. I hope they think they got here as fast as they could, because there's just no place like Texas. And they've been married 54 years. And in that time, they had 2 daughters and 2 sons. So they have an active family life. And one is here. Casey Burdett is here with us. He's also a member of Travis. And he and his wife, Regan, have 3 children that are growing up here amongst us. We're so very happy to welcome Bruce today. He's going to share a number of things from his career, which has been a military career, and his salvation, how Christ has been in his life now these many years. Thank you.
Hello? 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 Can you hear me? Hello? Put this over here. Okay. Okay, it's 12:37. I've got some note cards that I'm going to cheat on, and I did that to make sure I'm disciplined in what I want to share, so I make sure that we get out of here by 2 o'clock. Okay. Okay, at ease. I say that for all the other prior service men that were in the uniform, so I want to make sure that you feel comfortable about being here by using that old expression. The reason I have a uniform on was I was dared by Chip. Can you get into your uniform? First of all, do you have one? Can you get into the uniform? Whatever. So I'm here on a dare by Chip. But also the fact that I got this uniform because my grandkids, some of my grandkids have asked me to be part of their school Veterans Day celebrations, and I wanted to make sure that I made it even that much more special for them. Oh, Barbara, thank you so much for your intro. And Patsy and I just love this class. I mean, we've got some wonderful friends from this class that have been very inviting ever since we joined. And there's a whole other story behind that, which Jim is aware of. I want to kind of talk to you about 3 things. I want to talk to you about some things from a personal standpoint, a family standpoint, and then something very briefly from a corporate perspective so that you can see the dimension of what Patsy and I experience on the corporate order in contrast to uniform, our civilian experiences when we have been together. And the other thing I want to make sure is that I think all of us would agree, especially with the maturity of this class and the members that we have met, that you can't be successful in any of those 3 dimensions, you know, personal and family and business, and then those of you who were experienced in the uniform. You can't do that without the Lord being with us in everything that we do. And So let me tell you how he entered into my life. How many of you have been in BSF? Isn't that a wonderful study? Just an unbelievable, wonderful study. Some have been in the table that right here where we ate. I was invited, as Patsy was, into BSF with a neighbor. And Patsy went first. I was challenged by her sitting at the table during her lesson, answering questions or whatever. And that also encouraged me to also respond to saying yes. And sitting around men of God, a lot of these were veterans. I mean, you can tell that they really have been in depth with the study of the Bible and Lord and sharing experiences and whatever. So I felt really uncomfortable the more I was in that study. We started out in the book of Matthew. And we thought, Patsy and I thought we were good. We grew up as Presbyterians. She's a preacher's wife, a Presbyterian minister. But over 2 years, it became obvious that I really was a failure when it came to knowing who the Lord was. There was a kind of we thought we were Christians. You know, again, we thought we were good people, and that was the extent of it. But we did not know, no question about that, we did not know Christ. And so we got into the study of the John, and what really moved me was John 14:6. What a wake-up call. No one comes to the Father except through me. And that was a real wake-up call for me. And I was sitting in, this is where Jim and I have a little bit of a kinship in the sense that I found myself at Tinker Air Force Base in a BOQ, and I was watching a Billy Graham crusade on TV. Now, Billy saved millions of people. Well, I'd be one of them. And he gave the invitation. So I kneel on my bed at the bedside and gave my life to the Lord as a sinful man, and I needed His forgiveness. And you know, I got up and there was this incredible sense of peace that came over me, and it was absolutely wonderful. And you know what? Here's who's the gentleman who said, now you know the rest of the story. Paul Harvey. Here's the rest of the story. I spent 17 years in BSF. And I know there's probably some here that have been even longer or whatever, but I spent 17 years in BSF. And I really got into it. And I became a discussion leader. We were talking about that. They called it a discussion leader way back then. Now we're group leaders or something like this. And in the course of that, I then was asked to open up with the teaching leader, a new class in Garland, Texas. And then we had moved down to Austin. And my goodness, here I found being asked to be the teaching leader for the Austin Evening Men's class of over 200 men. And you know what? I got the chance to teach John. To give back to him what he delivered to me through that study. It was just a powerful experience. You just need to know that. It was just a powerful, powerful experience for me. So anyway, and of course, Billy Graham still remains very much important to me. And as Patsy knows, I listen to Billy Graham crusades on satellite radio almost every night, because it was such a reinforcement about the greatness of his message, which was so simply presented. Okay, corporately, I spent 10 years with a company called Chubb. I I got out of the Army, took it early, I got out of the Army because I was in discussions about being sent to Vietnam for a second tour. And so that prompted, of course, Patsy didn't want anything to do with that. So I got into working for a company called Chubb for about 10 years, and then for about 25 years I worked with major brokers like Marsh McLennan and Arthur J. Gallagher, and then I lastly I ended up for about 5 years working for a company called Frost Bank, and I ended up being the president and CEO of the insurance company of Frost Bank. So I had my handful of great career, but the important thing, I want to get into the military side of things. I spent 32 years in this uniform, not this one, and some of it was in Vietnam. It was active and reserve, predominantly in a reserve capacity. I went to Vietnam in 1969. I was there in 69 and 70, and I was with a program called Phoenix Fund Long. It was a CIA intelligence program, and we went after the Vietcong infrastructure. And I served with a team with the 101st Airborne as well. And I was not a Christian during that time, so the Lord certainly took care of me and while I was there. The guys that I had lunch with from time to time, or actually often I should say, wanted me to kind of share some war stories. Well, I said, this is not the appropriate gathering for me to share war stories, but I will share one event. First week in country, I was up in Southwest Way, and we got started hit by mortar shells. And I got up and I started to put my pants on and uniform, you know, and this medic comes along and says, here, LT, this is all you need. And he gave me my flak jacket and my helmet and my rifle. So I went to run out the door, and he grabbed me and pulled me back. And just as he pulled me back, a mortar shell went off right there in front of the door. So I wouldn't be standing here giving that story to you all if it weren't for him. And he said, LT, you got to wait to a count of 12 by the time when you hear the launch, and you run to your 12 seconds to run to your next position. You know, but that was within the first week of being in Vietnam. I got lots of stories that I could share that go similar to that. Now, I spent time in reserve units in New Jersey and Indiana and whatever, but most of it was when we got back to Texas, and I spent most of my time with the 95th Division. We have another distinguished alumni from the 95th Division in Jim Smith. Yeah. So this was our patch, and he had a great story about his own salvation experience, also in Oklahoma City, similarly as I did. We have something very much in common. Now, I did all the prerequisites of attending the Command and General Staff College. I got selected and accepted to the Army War College, which is very difficult to get in unto itself. And I rose in ranks, commanding battalions and brigade level responsibilities. And then I was finally selected, approved by the Senate, to be the commanding general of the 95th Division. Now let me tell you about the 95th Division, if I may. It is the largest training division in the country, consisting of 5,000 troops. A huge responsibility, 11 states, territory. And we did training at Fort Bragg, Fort Benning, Fort Leonard Wood, Fort Sill. And in fact, actually, the division commander position is a 2-star position. I mean, that's the level of degree of responsibility. But what affected, in fact, actually, in that my last year as the commanding general, I had a uniform on for 156 days. Now think about that. I've got a busy, very involved responsibility on the corporate side, raising a family of 4 kids and whatever, and I've got a uniform on 156 days out of the year. There is no weekend warrior. That went away a long, long time ago, as you might imagine. Well, it was the configuration of all those responsibilities that I finally pulled the plug, because I just could not keep up with the demands with BSF and running the division, raising a family with Patsy and my my corporate career. So it's just too much to juggle. So I want to make sure that I do, in the time that we do have, I want to share something that still remains such an incredible experience that I had, and Patsy went along with me with the 9th Division. We were invited to be part of the 50th anniversary of D-Day over in France. Now, the 95th Division has a rich, rich history of excellence as well as heroic success in the liberation of Metz, France. And Metz, France is located on the eastern border, right within miles of Germany. And Metz, France, at the time when the division came on site, was being held by the Germans. And it was a city that had never been taken by opposing force. And so there's a lot of incredible experience. It's a highly decorated division. There's 5 Medal of Honor winners that came out of that year and a half to 2 years of battle. That is also significant to point out. It was part of General Patton's army, the Third Army. And in fact, the 9th Division, as Jim knows, is called the Iron Men of Metz. That was a title that the Germans had given to our division. Anyway, we were, again, when we were asked to go to this and participate in the 50th anniversary, and what's really neat about this is when I was at the War College, I had to study for almost a year Overlord, which was the campaign battle for D-Day. And we had to understand Eisenhower's plans and all of the participation of the Allied forces in making that happen. So I had a chance to even see this played out from what we had studied for so long. Well, we got over there, and I was able to take my color guard and the division band to help celebrate this experience. And boy, I tell you, the people of Metz, France loved us. They loved this patch. Yes. In fact, we got overwhelmed wanting to give our autographs for them. My challenge was to deflect those sorts of things in honor of the 125 actual World War II veterans from the 95th Division that actually fought in this battle. We started this experience by giving a speech. I was to give a speech at this memorial in a little village called Metz, and it was across the street from this schoolyard, and all these little children were all lined up waving the American flags. And here you got this color guard. What an incredible scene! Pulls 2 busloads of the actual veterans of the 94th Division, and almost everything exited with some kind of an injury or handicap. I mean, it was significant. I had prepared this nice speech for this monument, but I just threw it away. I just couldn't these prepared remarks, because when I saw that, I had to speak from my heart. So my speech came again from my heart to acknowledge that. They put us on these flat-bottom boats, small crafts, to float up the river, to travel up the river to the actual city of Metz, France. And they had taken wine bottles and had put the 95th Division label on them and really went out of their way to celebrate. Well, we get to Metz, France, and as Patsy, I had to go around. I partners up with Pamela Harriman. Remember, how many remember Averell Harriman? And he was the Secretary of State, for example, for Truman. And he was the ex-governor of New York and whatever. Pamela Harriman was the ambassador to France. And we had to give some speeches together. And the whole event culminated with an incredible ceremony in this great big town hall. The mayor of Metz, France, was a short little, what in the military we called undertall. He's a little squatty body, white hair. He had been very active in the French underground. And I won't even get into the detail of what we experienced going through the museum there and whatever. But we were to give this ceremony, and I had my division staff do something. We did some research on Metz, France, and whatever. And out of that research came an opportunity for us to create a flag, a unit flag, for an artillery battery from Metz, France, that had come over to help to liberate us from the British joining Washington's army. And so I had this black and white checkered flag, and so I had an opportunity to present that to the mayor, and Pamela Harriman standing there, all the veterans up against the wall in the back, and as I'm presenting this with the attempt to do it in French, which there were tears in the mayor's eyes, and Pamela. They started to cry over this experience. Now, Patsy claims it was because I had just completely bastardized the pronunciation of French in making this presentation. But it really was an exceptionally emotional moment for them in terms of what had taken place in that city. But my next reaction was to deflect any attention to this little gathering and put it back onto the wall where all the veterans were, because they were the ones that needed to be acknowledged for what they had contributed to what took place there in Metz, France. Anyway, it was an incredible experience from that standpoint. When we were leaving, Patsy and I, we were going to go on to Paris, where she studied. She studied in Paris, knows the language, and but I had been assigned a French interpreter, a lieutenant in the French army, and a nice young man. And we got out of his car. He's dropping us off at the train station. I reached over to grab his hand and say, "Thank you," and he says, "No, no, no, no. I need to say thank you to you, because it is because of you that I'm not speaking German." Yes. Think of the significance of that. An incredible impression. It made such an incredible impression on me. And as disciples of Christ, we carry on. Think of that. That generation had passed this on to this young lieutenant, from grandfather and grandmother, parents, to him. and for him to have felt the way that he did. And as disciples of Christ, we carry that very same responsibility of passing on our own spiritual heritage and stories and our knowledge of who Christ is. And you know, I got very touched by when I was sitting with Cason's family a couple Sundays ago. I was very touched with a story that Ben had shared in his sermon. Remember, he talked about, well, I'll tell you where it is. This is where Joshua had asked them to gather up the storms. We all had to walk out with a little storm. And for what purpose was that? Well, I won't go into the details. I mean, I've got it written here on my in my Bible. My Bible is all incredibly captured by written in the Bible in the margins. But here it was. The first two of the 4 points that he brought out in his sermon was stop and remember the moment. Remember that? And he even talked about his father's wedding ring and whatever. The second point was remember the magnitude of the moment, which is out of verse 8. Well, that's exactly what had occurred right there as we left Metz, France from that lieutenant. So impressed me now in terms of how it's very important that we do the same to the generations that follow us. I have on my business card, I've got a written up in the top is my favorite verse. It's out of Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Well, you know, and I can say this to the age group that we all represent and whatever. And I was explaining a little bit of this to Kent a little while ago. We are always, as parents, aren't we, wondering how well have we done in raising our children to expose them to Scripture, the stories of the Bible, the moments in the Bible that, like Joshua, I mean, this whole Bible is stories and events that we have a responsibility to share on very early on with our young children. Well, I had a chance to experience that. Again, going back to that we want to know, don't we? How did we do? Right? We want to know how did we do with the investment that we made in our children and and successfully our grandchildren. And I came across my grandson's Instagram homepage, and up there says, was Philippians 4:13. Yes. And don't you know that was the Lord speaking to me and essentially to pass it, that we had done a good job because we had brought him up to know the Lord, and he passed it on to his son, Casey. And that was God telling me and passing, you did a good job. And aren't we constantly looking for that evidence in our lives about how we did? What's our heritage? What does our legacy look like as we move and get older in life? But anyway, I wanted to share with you the similarities that had occurred with what we experienced there in Metz, France with that lieutenant, and how it was brought to current with my grandson, Casey Jr. Okay, well, we don't call him Junior, but Casey. Anyway, I wanted to make sure that you listen to that. In terms of those four involvements of personal, resident family, and my corporate career and my military career and whatever, and I have very responsible civilian responsibilities. I won't get into any detail, but and BSF, I finally had to pull the plug and call timeout. I was federally approved for my second star as made to be Major General, but I just was shortchanging, particularly my younger son, shortchanging Patsy, who had been so loyal. So I left. I retired early to go home, and we left and moved to Monterey, North Carolina, to live in Patsy's old childhood home in Monterey, North Carolina, and guess where? Billy Graham country. Yeah. And I got a chance to serve on the board of trustees for Monterey College, which is a wonderful Christian college. And right beside me, I sat with Will Graham, who was Franklin Graham's son. And so it's another way that the Lord just acknowledged a lot that was going on. We sold the home and came back to Texas, and that's why we came back, because Casey's family was there or whatever. We had a big 40-foot RV, and it was just too much to us to go ahead and try to buy another house. So Patsy and I ended up for almost 10 years being full-timers in an RV, traveling all over the United States. And the national parks, visiting our grandchildren, by that time had been interspersed around the country. But we lived full-time experience and loved every minute. But when we got back here to Fort Worth, because we again wanted to be close to him, who was left unfortunately, but we are selling our RV, and we bought a house, and we meant to be here, and this is how we ended up joining the Crown class, which has been the thrill of our lives, being part of that, because you have extended your love to us so meaningfully, and we thank you so much for what you have done in our lives. So that's it. How did I do? Thank you. I was hoping that the uniform would encourage you not to leave. And you have been very, very good to listeners. And thank you so very much. And this is for Jim. Here, Jim. This is the 95th Division patch. My gift to him. An alumni, I might add. That's it.
Let's sing before we leave.
Sure. You bet.
There's a sweet, sweet spirit in this place, and I know it's the strength of the Lord. There are sweet expressions on each face, and I know
tape that? Good. I want my brother to see that. I've been telling him about the general, but he don't. And of course, Wes Black told me in New Orleans he was the boss of General. Anyway, pastor over at Brambles. My brother knew that too, but he released the 2 stars. One star took me a box of 2 stars. General Bruce.
He's shouting up the stream at that point. No, it don't float that way.
Well, I said, this guy was in the head of the chaplains. So I said, I didn't think this. If you're head of the chaplains, you wouldn't have another chaplain above you. We'll figure it out. I got some notes, and I'll pass it on to my brother and he'll.
I ain't worried about it. They ain't gonna be shooting at me.
Yeah.
And they can't fire me either. You gotta hire me first.